Welcome, the Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquin, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, live on this beautiful Tuesday morning. I hope this finds you well wherever you may be, whether you're podcasting in the middle of the night or maybe you're just rolling out of the rack, getting your day started, or you're running errands, or you're in your cubicle, wherever you are. Maybe you're on the treadmill getting it done. Welcome. And what a fantastic day. You know what? The cool weather, they're threatening to be here. I heard Thursday or Friday, it's supposed to be below 90 degrees, and we are so excited for it. We're getting close to the time of the year where we get to brag about how great the weather is. Until then, we still got a few more days of 98 and 97 and 99, but it sure beats 100. Speaking of 100, Donald Trump was on fire today. We're going to talk about that. We had economic data out. We got a Fed meeting. We got so much to talk about, but before we do that, the toll-free number at 800-951-0592 if you'd like to continue your education. Make All-American Gold part of your daily routine. That is our website. You can shop online. You can listen to all the videos and read all the articles that we post up there each and every day. Ramon's got a pretty good clip by Peter Schiff today. It's down near the bottom of the page. It's an hour long, but he covers all kinds of ground, some interesting things. Make sure you check that out. But we have two really pretty big events happen this morning. The first was Toys R Us. You know, the toy store. I don't even know how many there are. Well, I do know how many there are. There's still 1,600 of them left. They filed for bankruptcy protection. And here's what I didn't know. The second largest retail bankruptcy behind Sears and Kmart. That's how much debt Toys R Us had. And it was actually hilarity as they were talking about, you know, they're going to try to keep all the stores open through the holiday. And I don't know if it was their CEO or their CFO or somebody. Well, you know, most of our stores are profitable. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no. Actually, they're not. Otherwise, you wouldn't be filing for bankruptcy, right? That's like saying, hey, you know what? If we didn't have all of this debt, right? If I didn't have to pay my student loan and my credit card, and if I didn't have to pay my Obamacare, and if I didn't have to pay my mortgage, well, I wouldn't be broke. So 64,000 people. Remains to be seen. Of course, somebody will loan them some money anyway to get through the holiday season. And then President Trump was in front of the UN today and said that, and I'll just quote, we will have no choice than to totally destroy North Korea. And, of course, referring to Kim Jong-un as Rocket Man. When he asked, I wonder if Elton John's down with it. Does he get like a royalty? Right? Rocket Man. Maybe the next time North Korea launches a missile, they can have that song playing in the background. But said that Rocket Man was on a suicide mission for himself and the regime. The North Korean mission to the United Nations did not immediately respond for comment about Trump's remarks, but I point those out. So think about this today. Second largest retail bankruptcy ever. Addressing the United Nations, hey, listen, you know what? It's going to be one or the other. Either he stops, which most people don't think he will, or we're going to totally destroy North Korea. You would think that maybe that would throw a little pause into Wall Street. Nope, it's still up a little bit today, if you can believe it. This is how big the bubble is. Gold is stabilized here. Silver Actually, silver's having a pretty good day. It's up about 18 cents right now, 17.25. Still, gold's up a few bucks, 13.08. As this is the first day of a 2-day Federal Reserve meeting, and here's what's really interesting, and this is kind of, I think, why people love to listen to this show. So the Federal Reserve, they have their own economists, right? They've got their own IT mafia. They've got all of their own internal reports and all of their mathematical formulas. And so when they come up with these plans, okay, like the plan that they're supposed to unveil tomorrow, which is the quote-unquote unwinding of all of the balance sheet. Well, not all of the balance sheet. They're not even talking about going back to the $700 billion. Everyone's saying it'll be somewhere around $3 trillion from the $4.5 trillion. But a lot of people, a lot smarter than me, coming out today saying, they're not going that far. It's going to be real, real slow and probably turn around before it's done. But neither here nor there. My point I'm getting to is, as they sit in their cubicles and in their rooms, and they probably have a big conference table, and they all gather around, and they all got out their mathematical formulas and all the whatever it is that they do, and they look at pie charts and bar charts. They look at all kinds of charts and graphs, and they come up with the conclusion of what is going to happen by enacting certain policies. I'm going to tell you how they've done when we get back.
By now the fighting will be close at hand.
The fighting is getting close at hand. Patriot Radio News Hour, 800-951-0592. I just love the timing. Right, so here we get ready. We're starting the first day of a 2-day Federal Reserve meeting. They're going to hold a press conference and everything. Right? Janet Yellen's going to come out, and she's going to talk in a very monotone voice. And she's going to come out and tell everybody how great they are. And that we're going to start this new program. And let me tell you how it's going to work. It's going to do this, and it's going to do that, and it's not going to do this, and it won't do that, and it's going to be wonderful. Right? And of course, Wall Street already knows. That's why I laughed yesterday. Wall Street was up yesterday. Gold was down. Of course, gold was down. Just they played the little game, right? And it started on Friday, and it may be done as of yesterday. We'll have to wait and see if there's any big surprise tomorrow. I don't think there's going to be. But the reason why Wall Street's still up, they don't believe anything they say. They don't believe that they're going to go start selling huge quantities of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. They'll sell a little bit. They'll do the pretend thing. But it's not going to go very far. Just like they don't believe, I know that I read it, oh, no, they're going to raise rates. They're not raising rates. So today, they came out and said, you know what? We studied the quantitative easing part. So when you think about quantitative easing, the first round started in 2008. The last bond purchase was in October of 2014. Now, back then, they told us this is what quantitative easing is going to do, this is what it's not going to do, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we hope is going to happen. Well, today they actually released the results. On the cusp of reversing the most ambitious monetary stimulation program in world history. I love that part, right? And it sounds really good, doesn't it? Reversing the most ambitious. You know, and when you think about the words that are used to describe, normally when you talk about a person being ambitious, that's a positive thing, right? Hey, they're ambitious. They're a go-getter. And then they talk about monetary stimulus. Right? Most people don't even understand what it is they're trying to say. Right? And really what it was is hey, we printed the crap out of money. Right? We printed we just made up all kinds of money out of thin air and created trillions and trillions of dollars worth of debt. That doesn't sound all that good all of a sudden. That doesn't sound all of that ambitious. And then they talk about the largest program in world history. Like I said, and I say this every so often, people, 100 years from now, when they write the history books, and they'll probably, just like we write the history books wrong now, they'll I'm sure, spin it in a certain way. But even still, they'll be like, what were these people thinking? Right? Nowhere in the history of the world did anybody say that would be good economic policy. But now they've come out and said, here's what the program was. Money printing. And this is out of CNBC this morning. And that it did one thing. It boosted stock prices. This is the Federal Reserve's own economist. The 3 iterations of quantitative easing each saw big boost to the stock market. And that actually makes sense if you understand what the stock market really is. Okay? The stock market's a debt market. And when you increase the amount of debt by trillions of dollars, the markets are going to view that positively. Right? The Fed's on our side. Right? Remember the idiot thing about don't fight the Fed, right? That's their whole little mantra. And it said that, talking about the S&P was up 140%. The economic impacts, now that was not why they told you they were doing quantitative easing. That's why Eric and I said they were doing it, right? Remember, what did we tell you? They're bailing out their friends, right? They care about their system, not about you or I. The economic impacts are much less clear. For most of the period, okay, so you're going to go from 2008 to 2014. For most of that period, and really for all of it, let's be honest, GDP struggled to gain. It's still struggling, right? And they used 2%. It struggled to do 2%. And this was one of the things that they told us of why they were doing the quantitative. They were going to get growth going again. Right? And they had all of their economy. They sat around the conference table eating their subsidized lunches saying, yes, this is what's going to help the average American on the street, if you want to believe that. Wealth disparity grew significantly. Again, who do you want to believe? We told you that was what was going to happen. The rich are going to get richer. The vast majority of us will actually be poorer. And really, when you think about our debt levels now that we all hold, right, just for our credit cards and our student loans and our mortgages and all that other crap, it's an all-time record high. That's not better. Income gain. Because remember, they're doing it for you. We're hard to come by. In other words, that's a fancy way for saying you didn't get any. Right? The rich guys got some. You didn't get nothing. And the Fed continually came up short on its inflation goal. So, according to their own economists, who are the ones, by the way, that said, yeah, we're going to do this, and here's what's going to happen. We're wrong about GDP. We're wrong about who was actually going to benefit, right, the wealth disparity. We're wrong about income gains. Oh, and we were wrong about the inflation thing as well. Those were the four things that were supposed to happen. The one thing that turned out to be right, they never said, oh, by the way, we're going to make Wall Street go through the roof. We're going to create another huge bubble. That's why I told you, and this is why you need to understand, they haven't fixed it. We're actually right back to the edge of the cliff again. You know this. No, I had one of our, a good customer of ours. He lives in South Carolina. His daughter lives in Florida. And they're older, right? And they want to be near their daughter and the grandkids and all of that. And he was just down there, right? And, they had the hurricane. So I said, well, how are things down there? He goes, man, where his daughter lived, it wasn't so bad. And he's talking about how she's already back at work. Most of her coworkers still aren't back, right? Even though they, the power's on there and all this stuff. Hey, you take advantage. But they were looking at, buying a place. And they're looking at in a building, and it's a 55 and older community and all of those things. And he said to the person, well, most people just pay cash. And the person looked at him like he was crazy. Oh, no. I mean, maybe we get 20%. Maybe. And then everyone finances it for 30 years. And he goes, it's a 55 and older community. Who's going to live 30 more years, right? Right? And he's like, then what? Oh, that's fine. Like, that's not how it used to be. And I have a lot of experience with I grew up in Syracuse, right? The East Coast, people retired to Florida. My grandparents, they bought a house in Florida. It wasn't a house. It was one of those condo buildings. They bought it. They paid cash. And then mortgage it. And I just think about, this is how poor everybody really is. They don't have the money to pay cash. And they say, talking about the central bank's announcement that it's going to start unwinding now. So they created a program that, according to the Fed's own economists, that the quantitative easing program came up well short of its goals. And I just bring this up because remember what I told you yesterday. Other central banks have tried to, quote-unquote, shrink their balance sheets, right? Because they always have a good reason for increasing them. And if you actually listen to Peter Schiff today, if you go and you want to listen to it, he'll give you a little history about how it came to fruition that the Federal Reserve was allowed to even buy U.S. Treasury. Because when they first created the Federal Reserve, that wasn't allowed. Right? And the reason why they didn't want to allow it is because they didn't want stuff like this to happen. Evaluating the effects of monetary policy is difficult. Even in the case of conventional interest rate policy, according to the St. Louis Fed's economist Stephen Williamson. Right? So he's saying, hey, listen, this isn't an exact science. Even when we're talking about conventional stuff, back when interest rates were, at 6 and 7%, and when things got bad, maybe they went to 4%, right? No one ever dreamed of going to 0 for 10 years. No one ever dreamed of the Federal Reserve and the central bank buying trillions of dollars worth of debt. And I'm going to tell you right now, I want you to think about this. What do you think happens now? Do you really believe, you're telling me that you believe that doing something everybody up until it happened for hundreds and hundreds of years, everybody said you don't do this, right? You don't take interest rates to zero or, heaven forbid, negative. And you don't create trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of fiat money. Because when it's over, it's going to end badly. We've only gotten the good part of it, right? This is the good part of quantitative easing. With respect to quantitative easing, again, this is the Federal Reserve's own economists who are probably the ones that told us how this thing was going to work. There are good reasons to be skeptical that it worked. Well, at least that it worked as advertised, right? Well, listen, there's not good reason to be skeptical. It didn't work as advertised. Not even close. And economists have made a good case that quantitative easing is actually detrimental. We haven't gotten to the detrimental side yet, but it's coming. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break.
This is the Phyllis Schlafly Report, a daily commentary continuing the conservative pro-family legacy of Phyllis Schlafly. Now from the Phyllis Schlafly Center studios, here's Ryan Haidt.
Thomas Homan, the no-nonsense head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, spoke out against Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and Philadelphia as cities that harbor illegal immigrants. Sanctuary cities, in my opinion, are un-American, he said in a recent interview. In the last year, I've read all these stories of how the crime rate has exploded in Chicago, and the president's trying to help them. We're stepping up our game in Chicago. Is Chicago doing everything that it can to decrease the criminal activity up there? I say no, Homan said. I say no because if you're an illegal alien and you get arrested in the United States for a crime and you get booked in Cook County, Chicago, my officers aren't allowed in the jail. They don't accept our detainers. They don't share information with us, he said. Why would Cook County not want my officers, federal law enforcement officers, to go talk to someone that committed yet another crime against the citizens of this country? It's ludicrous, the acting head of ICE continued. These jurisdictions, these cities, are choosing to shield people who violated the laws of this country. So what's next? Sanctuary cities for people who don't want to pay their taxes? Well, San Francisco became America's best-known sanctuary city when Kate Steinle was shot and killed there in 2015 by illegal immigrant Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, who was released from custody by the sheriff despite 7 felony convictions and 5 orders of deportation. A few months after Kate Steinle's death, another illegal, Pedro Figueroa Zarceño, was in police custody for an outstanding warrant. This time, the police turned the alien over to federal authorities for deportation. But, like many people who were ordered deported, Pedro didn't actually go home. He remained in San Francisco, continuing to resist deportation. In 2016, his hearing was scheduled for 2019. Adding insult to injury, the San Francisco city attorney announced in August an agreement to settle a lawsuit by paying Pedro $190,000. The illegal immigrant not only gets to stay, he'll also get a lump sum from the taxpayers to enjoy life while awaiting his next hearing.
This has been the Phyllis Schlafly Report from Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. Illegal immigration burdens our schools and social services and opens doors to criminals and terrorists. Outdated visa programs divert jobs from Americans. PhyllisSchlafly.com chronicles these outrageous unfair practices and provides answers. Go online to PhyllisSchlafly.com. Thanks for listening, and join us next time for the Phyllis Schlafly Report.
2 hands. He was backwoods,
Welcome back. Patriot Radio News Hour. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. Tomorrow is the announcement. And everybody expects the starting of the unwinding of quantitative easing. Quite possibly the biggest economic failure. The biggest economic failure ever as far as the central bank goes. Now, in order for that statement to be true, we're in for some rough times. And now you have their own economists coming out and saying, you know what? Didn't work. Definitely did. Well, let me tell you, it didn't work the way they said it was going to. And what the Federal Reserve wanted out of quantitative easing was inflation and GDP growth. And of course, if inflation rises, you almost, GDP rises with it. See what I'm saying? And of course, they use the word inflation. What they really mean is devaluation. What they really want is a controlled valuation. And just anybody who thinks that they can take a $19 trillion economy, 320-plus million people, and somehow through economic theory believe that they can control inflation, what kind of drugs are you on? But in this report, the Federal Reserve's own economists admit we already knew that it didn't work, but we did it anyway. Because quantitative easing wasn't invented by our central bank. Oh, no. The ones that invented it were the Japanese. And they said that they actually studied it. And they said where in Japan, where QE originated, the program did the exact same thing. Asset prices rose, right? Stock market. Got to remember, so Japan, the stock market went from 40,000 to 10. They started their QE. They got about the same. They got it from that 10 to 20. So they didn't do quite as well as we did, right? Because, we're America, so we can do it better. They said they didn't get any inflation. And they didn't get any they didn't get any GDP growth either. But we did it anyway. And we came out and we told everybody this was what was going to happen, even though they already knew that wasn't going to happen. But again, right, it's going to be different this time. It worked just like it did in Japan. We got the exact same thing. Nobody made any more money. Inflation, the way they track inflation now, it's almost impossible to get it. Right? I mean, again, they live in some bubble that the rest of us don't live in. And the only thing that happened is asset prices rose. And now we're talking about what happens now. If you're going to try to go back, there's a very simple reason why it is that 100% of the time going back creates a recession. Do you know that our balance sheet, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, right? It's about just not quite 25% of the entire country's GDP. That's how big it is. It's amazing, right? You think about our national debt, their debt, states and cities' debts. I mean, we're so far above what GDP is. It's incredible. But if the only thing that GDP or quantitative easing does was increase asset prices, what happens when you go the other way? I mean, logically, right? If you ask somebody, you know what? Okay, now, I admit, I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Yale. I'm not an economist. Okay? I know how to make a pie chart, right? But I'm not, pi is 3.14 something. Right? That's the extent of my mathematical wizardry. But just using common sense. Okay, first, you already knew a central bank that did quantitative easing. And they did it big, right? The Japanese don't mess around. I mean, their quantitative easing, granted, we got a bigger GDP. But the size of their central bank's balance sheet compared to their GDP, it's even bigger, right? I mean, it's huge. And they knew what the results were. Yeah, lifted stock prices and, maybe housing prices. Anything that debt-related got more expensive. Nobody made any more money, and it didn't help GDP growth. Sound familiar? Does that sound like the economy we've had now since 2008? And now they're going to come out tomorrow, and they're going to tell us that this time it's different, and we're going to unwind this, and it's going to be perfectly fine. And it's not going to cause a recession, and it's going to be like watching the paint dry. And I don't know what other ridiculous analogies they're going to talk about. Here's what their economists are now saying. Clearly, and Fed speaks a pretty strong word, clearly, because they don't want to be clear about anything. There is a risk of policy error which could trigger a sell-off in global financial markets. But this week's confirmation that the Fed will begin reducing its balance sheet should pass off smoothly, according to an economist that doesn't work at the Federal Reserve. See? It's different this time. Yeah, there's a risk. I know it's never actually happened the way we say it's gonna, but this time it'll be different. Patriot Radio News Hour. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fine. We know there's a risk, but it's gonna be fine. It's never been fine. And they'll try to tell you, it's never been done before. Yes, it has. Quantitative easing, it was never done before. Yes, it was. Countries have tried to do this before. They've all ended the same way. We're not special. I know we like to think we're special, right? It's just like as parents, we always think our kid is special, right? We're not. And the answer really, it doesn't have to do with any complex formula, right? It really boils down to common sense. Okay, here's what you did. Right? You printed trillions of dollars worth of fake money, and they didn't have to do anything. They just went to their keyboard, and you bought up all of this debt. Right? You drove interest rates down to nothing. Right? Part of the reason why I think these tax cuts they're not going to be as good We've already had interest rates at 0 for a decade. I mean, the 10-year note's still only at 2.2. Everybody's borrowed everything they could possibly borrow. And now you're going to say, okay, it's going to be different this time. And we're going to start selling it off, and nobody's going to care, and it's going to be great. And it's going to just be a little bit. And really, the logical outcome is whatever bubble you blew up, you're going to start deflating, right? And, of course, you're going to control it. Right? That's the best part. Right? They really are full of themselves, aren't they? And I just and then really, here's what bothers me the most. It's not like I got some top secret information. Right? You don't even have to look hard. It's not like I'm going into the dark corners of the web. Right? I'm not going through the WikiLeaks documents. It's not that hard. They just simply choose to say, well, no, it's going to be fine. And then the funny part is they'll tell you, oh, well, we never saw it coming. You know, these bubbles, they're hard to spot. I'm going to give you a sign that bubbles are not hard to spot. We had the second largest retail bankruptcy of all time this morning, and Donald Trump coming out and saying, hey, if we need to, if Rocket Man doesn't put the rockets in check, we're going to totally destroy North Korea. Dow's up 50 points. There's your bubble. That's all you need to know. Because you know that. Come on, none of those make sense. By the way, on top of the Toys R Us bankruptcy, you want to add this in there. Another thing that quantitative easing did not fix. Fitch, right? They're one of the rating agencies, right? S&P and Fitch. They came out and said 1/3 of all malls in the United States need to close by 2020. So if they're saying 1/3, my guess is it's going to be half. And I've been telling you, remember, I've been saying it all year. The retail bankruptcy, we're not done. Oh, no. We're not done with Toys R Us. And believe me, the second place Toys R Us, by this time next year, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not even in the top 5. One more piece of economic news was out today. Home builders. This was a construction starts. Home builders slowed their pace of construction by a sharp 0.8%, and that's a big number. You know, I know it's not even 1%, but that's a big number, 0.8%. The second straight monthly decline, right? And we keep talking about this. They keep talking about there's a supply problem and all of this, and of course I come out here and there's no supply problem. There's plenty of homes for $3, $4, $5 million, $2 million. They're everywhere. What there isn't is homes for less than $200,000. And you would think, listen, if the home builders could build a $200,000 house and sell them and make a bunch of money, they'd be building them. And I keep trying to explain that to you. Instead, what do? They build apartments. The tepid sales numbers suggest that it has become more profitable for companies to build a smaller number of houses for the affluent than it is to ramp up construction of a broader swath of buyers and renters. Right? That's really well put. Let me give you some plain English on that. We can't make any money building houses for people that don't have any money. Right? That's what that means. We can't make any money to build houses for people that don't have any money. Remember, one of the things that quantitative easing has given us, the largest division, if you will, the largest gap in wealth, and I don't even know, maybe a century. We have more people making less money than ever before. This is what the central bank has accomplished. Let's give them a round of applause. And tomorrow they're going to give us some more manure. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. Final segment, Patriot Radio News Hour. Listen, maybe we can all just go to Never Never Land and fly around with the Lost Boys and Peter Pan and Janet Yellen. She can be, what's the little one? Tinkerbell. Yeah, Tinkerbell. She can be Tinkerbell, right? Put their little pixie dust all over. See, you know, everything's fine. It's going to be different this time. Because why? Because, well, as long as I believe it, then you should believe it. And as long as we believe it, then it must be true. This is our new economic policy. And I know, listen, I don't want it to end badly, but, I mean, read what the home builders said. I didn't say it. Hey, we only build homes for rich people. Why? Because poor people can't afford one. That's simple. Right now, that actually makes sense. Oh, no, we got a supply problem. You're right. You know what the supply problem is? We just don't have enough people that make enough money to actually be able to buy a home. Those are the facts. And then somehow you want to think, hey, you know what? In baseball, if a guy hits 3 out of 10, a guy hits 300, he's a pretty good hitter. Right? Football. Right? If your quarterback's hitting 60 to 65% of his passes, he's a pretty good quarterback. I'm coming out and telling you what the Federal Reserve is going to announce tomorrow, and what they tell you is going to happen. It hasn't happened. That hasn't been right 60% of the time. It hasn't been right 30% of the time. It's never happened the way they're going to say it's going to happen tomorrow. And yet somehow they're going to come out, and everybody knows what I'm saying is true. But they're going to come out tomorrow, and they're all going to clap, and, oh, yeah, Janet Yellen. This is not going to work. Now, what's going to happen? I don't know. Logic tells me that it's going to end badly for the asset prices. But at first, right, they're going to go right in and don't fight the Fed. And then she's going to be spreading her little pixie dust and forget about what we said was going to happen. Right now, just think about the policy they put in place, the quantitative easing. What they actually said would happen, none of that happened. None of it. The only thing that happened was asset prices rose. That's it. That wasn't even one of the things they said was supposed to happen. Now they're going to come out tomorrow and say, oh, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be like watching paint dry. It's going to be that boring. The markets aren't going to care at all. 800-951-0592. If you want to think that maybe the Fed is going to institute this program and be very dovish about it tomorrow, and you think gold's going to spike on that news, I'm going to run $10 libs on special today at $675. If you want to wait and let's see what happens, we'll talk again about it tomorrow. But U.S. $10 Liberties at $6.75 at 800-951-0592. Unfortunately, I wish it was going to be different this time. I just don't think it will.